Hey everyone, it's Justin here, lead designer and owner of Black Bear Creative. I'm here with my main man Dylan. He's a junior designer here. Say hello to the camera. I thought it'd be a great idea for us to go through a process video for our brand identity projects. Since the last one was done back in 2017, possibly 2016, it's been that long I can't really remember. A lot of things has changed since then. We've added a lot of new techniques, a lot of new steps to the process, just to improve the design work, optimize the whole process, and end of the day just make the overall client experience a lot better. So I hope this gives you a bit more of an insight to what we do behind the scenes, and maybe you might learn a thing or two. So sit back and enjoy. So once the project started, we normally and highly recommend doing a brand strategy session. So this can take up to about half a day to a day, where we normally visit the client and we sit down with all the key decision makers and we figure out what is the brand. So with aid of a whiteboard or post-it notes, we go through the brand attributes. What is the brand? What does it sound like? What does it look like? What do people feel when interacting with the brand? Creating that clarity around that with all the important people in the room. From there, we figure out the customer bios, or user profiles. Who's the ideal customer? When we try to create about 3 to 4 customer bios, and dig deep and figure out who are they, what do they do, how much do they earn, what are they looking at when interacting with their service, and how can you exceed their expectations. So we spend a lot of time going through and I'm unpacking and discussing this. From there we look at the main priorities or action tasks, what needs to be done now in the next 2 to 3 months, or in the next 6 to 12, and so on, and just sort of figure out what are the main high priority things that need to be done. And it's just a great way to get everybody in the room and agreeing on a set direction of where the project needs to go. We can create another video on this because this is so important and so much more information to unpack, but this is like a brief overview of that. So from the brand strategy, we use a lot of that information and incorporate it into the brief. The brief is another very important part of the project. Boils down everything that was discussed in the brand strategy session, puts it on paper into something tangible, and it's just something that everyone can refer to when designing and making design decisions, because it stops people making subjective design decisions based on I like this color more, or I like this font more. It's more about the brand and who the brand's trying to target, what goals the company wants to achieve. So normally in our briefs we go through who you are, what do you do, where are your customers based, where do you want to go, what's the personality of your company, who are your competitors, what do you want to achieve in this project, how does this project make it happen, and similar questions like that. The client can refer back to it at any time and make sure everybody's on the same page. So once everyone's happy with the brief, we move on to mood boards. And I think we've done a previous video on this before, but basically we like to provide 3 different directions. A mood board is just a collage of images, fonts, symbols of other logos, inspirational photos in different color palettes that sort of reflect what was discussed in the brief and in the strategy session. So we like to do free, give it a bit more of an option of where we can take the brand, what we're thinking, and what can be done, and sort of get a bit of a feel from the client of what they like and what they don't like. So once we get feedback from the client about the mood board, we then get to the fun part, which is concepts. So we design normally about 3 concepts. Before we start anything on the screen, we like to obviously sketch things out first. So we'll start with a mind map, linking keywords about the business, what they do, what they want to provide their customers, and we sort of try to find relationships between each of those words and just keep expanding until we sort of got a good sense of where we can take the actual logo itself and figure out if we something unique instead of doing stuff that's been done before. So after the mind map, we start doing the actual logo sketches, and normally, depending on the designer, like we all have our own ways of doing it, but I typically like to do around 15, 20, 30, depending on the project. You can the more the better. So the main exercise of sketching is not to draw perfect representations of shapes and logos, but to quickly draw multiple figures, which allows me to unload everything that's on my mind and get rid of all the bad ideas or the obvious ideas as fast as possible. And then like at the 20th sketch, you start to sort of struggle with ideas, but then it forces you to sort of create more unique or out of the box solutions, and then you start to focus more on different fonts, letters, symmetry of letters, negative space, alignment, uppercase, lowercase, and then it allows you to explore multiple angles, multiple perspectives. So once we've completed our sketches, we've got a good set to pick from. We'll pick a couple and recreate them in Adobe Illustrator. So the main things we're trying to achieve here is to create something simple, legible, communicates very effectively, and just remarkable. Something that makes you look twice. So we're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at negative space between letters. We'll massage the typeface to suit our logo symbol, or we might just be working on a logo mark, so we're just working on the typeface. So we might grab a standard typeface and just change it completely to get the result that we need. So it's a lot of experimentation and a lot of fun in this process. So once we pick the top 3 black and white concepts, we'll then prepare them in the presentation to show the client. I don't really like just giving the client the logo themselves, because it doesn't really give context of the logo and how that reflects the brand. Within the presentation, we'll reflect back onto the brief, the keywords that we discussed in the strategy session, and that gives context of what the logo means. Sort of gives more, and it just helps tell the story of the brand more. And we also like to create a lot of Photoshop mock-ups, so it just places the actual logo in an actual real world situation, where it be on a poster, business card, anything, or digital screen. It just gives more of a, you can actually see it being applied and gives more context to what we're trying to do. It's also a great way for us to test it and see if, for instance, if it's the logo is going to be used in a lot of digital collateral, then it's a great way for us to test it and see its flaws, if it will work when it's minimized, or will it work on certain color backgrounds. It's just a great way for us to do some pre-testing and making sure it all works and will look great when applied to different sort of media. Also, during this phase, before we put it into the presentation, we like to print out and test the sizing of it when it's imprinted and in the screen version as well. This just allows us to see, okay, what's the smallest we can go with it still being legible, and this will help us determine will this font actually work in a real world situation. Can it work for pretty much all platforms? And yeah, it's just a great way to make sure we're creating something that can be legible, can be recognizable to actual people that are going to be seeing and interacting with the logo and the company's brand. So after the presentation, we'll get feedback from the client. Hopefully, we always hope it's good feedback, but from there we may have to make some refinements to the logo, change a couple of things here and there. From that stage, once we get approval, and this is all in black and white by the way, once we get approval for the new refinements, we then give some color options to the client. So we'll work on the color palette, we'll look into our Pantone books, our color guides, and make sure everything matches up. So whatever color palette we choose, we make sure we match it up to CMYK, RGB, so it looks good on screen, print. So once everything is approved, the color's approved, the logo's approved, everyone's happy, the client's excited, we're happy because everything got approved. We then prep everything for the client. So we prep all the files, so pretty much all the basics: PNG, PDF, JPEGs, EPS, SVGs, and any other specific ones that the client might require, and they'll all be color matched to the right values based on our swatch books and stuff like that. Export them all, package them more neatly in their files, and we even sort of provide a file type guide which tells them what each file type is for, what does it do, how they should be used, and all that sort of stuff. So once all the logo files are prepped and all neatly packaged, we'll work on their style guide. So depending on the scope of the project, a well refined style guide will include everything from their brand attributes, their mission statement, their brand archetypes, and then it'll go through how to apply their logo, the logo construction, typography they need to use, photography examples they should be using, and yeah, a whole bunch of other things as well that just sort of helps anyone from outside the organization, whether they are creating any marketing material for them, they can just pick up the style guide and look at it and completely understand of what the brand is, how they need to be perceived, what messaging they want to, what visual language do they use. So once we completed the style guide, all the files are all ready, we'll package it all up. If the file is too big, through Dropbox, or we'll send it via email, send it to the client, and that's pretty much it, sums it all up. That's how we do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give us a like or subscribe for more design related content, and until then, we'll see you in the next one.